All right, sixth grade, we're here for chapter 26, Israel Hands, in which Jim must confront the remaining pirate. And while Israel Hands has promised to help Jim sail the ship, Jim doesn't fully trust him, as well he shouldn't. They do begin sailing the ship to the other side of Treasure Island so that it is no longer accessible to the pirates. But Israel Hands, who claims to be old and drunk and not able to do anything, says, "Jim, this brandy's too strong. Can you get me something to drink? That's not so alcoholic." And Jim's like, "Well, what would you like?" And Israel Hands, who is too stupid to even remember what his lie was, says, "I don't care as long as it's strong." So he says he's too drunk to have anything more, and he's asking for strong alcohol. Good job, Israel Hands. This is also the man who creates a new contraction all on his own. He combines might and not into modant. Ugh. Just butchering the English language. We are shown several times throughout this that Israel Hands is not very smart. But Jim goes below deck to get him his drink. But Jim is being clever here. He pops off his shoes so that he doesn't make stepping noise as he goes around, runs to the other side of the deck, and peeks out another hole to see what Israel Hands is up to. And the wounded seaman crawls his way over to a rope and retrieves his bloody dagger. They call it a dirk. It's a long knife, like 10 inches long. Looks at it, tests its sharpness by pricking his hand, grins, puts it inside his coat, and slumps back to look like he hasn't moved at all. So Jim realizes Israel Hands is plotting to kill him, just like he killed O'Brien, the man in the red cap, still lying on deck. But Jim retrieves the wine, the port, which is a fortified wine, for Israel Hands, who begins drinking again, and asks Jim to cut him a chew of tobacco. And Jim agrees, but says first he's going to say his prayers for all the dead and all the terrible things that are going on. Israel Hands is like, "Why would I bother praying?" And Jim's like, "Well, don't you fear for your mortal soul?" And they have this conversation about souls and spirits. And Israel Hands says murdering people doesn't do much good because their spirits get to live on. But he also says spirits don't count for anything. Israel Hands is having a hard time with this. But Jim figures he's safe as long as they're sailing because they both want the boat to get where it's going safely. And Israel Hands isn't strong enough to run everything right now. So he has Jim sail the boat until they get to the next anchorage. And Jim gets excited in the sailing and he forgets the fact that Israel Hands has a bloody knife and plans to murder him. And as he's pulling the boat up, Jim forgets about it and turns his back to Israel Hands. And Jim either gets lucky or he saw his shadow or just had an uneasy feeling as he turns around and there's Israel Hands, knife in hand. Well, Jim lets out a cry of fear, and Israel Hands lets out a cry of rage, and a chase begins around the ship. And Jim hides behind one of the masts, and he's looking left and right and around the mast as he and Israel Hands are going back and forth, as you guys might have done in a game before. But Jim points out, I may have played this as a game before in my life, but this wasn't a game now. But he starts to think, I'm faster than this wounded old man. I think I can take him. At which point, the boat crashes into a sandbar, and it tilts, and Jim and O'Brien's corpse and Israel Hands go tumbling down to the side. Now, Jim at this point has already tried his gun on Israel Hands, but because he was stuck in the water, the primer, the gunpowder that you would have to light the main gunpowder in the charge and propel the bullet forward, has gotten wet and is therefore useless. But they all get tangled up down there, and Jim, seeing that he can't just run up the deck because the ship's now tilted, starts climbing up the mast. And Israel Hands gets O'Brien's body off of him, puts his knife in his teeth, and starts climbing up after Jim. And Jim's made it to the top, and what does he do? He takes out his two pistols, and he quickly changes the primer. And he cocks both pistols, and he's got two guns leveled at Israel Hands. And Israel Hands admits that they're at something of an impasse, taking the knife out of his teeth. We'll have to sign some sort of articles, but I guess you've won, Jim, because Jim threatens to blow his brains out if he comes any closer. And Jim starts feeling confident. Yeah, I won. I beat this guy. Nothing can happen. At which point, there's suddenly a whistling noise, and he feels a sharp pain in his shoulder as a knife has been now thrown into his shoulder, and both guns go off. And the shock of being hit by a knife, and Israel Hands plummets into the water below, and that's where the chapter ends. So, big events this chapter. 1, how do you think Jim could have handled that situation better? 2, is Israel Hands dead? Leave your thoughts on that down in the comments. 3, how's Jim going to get back to everyone else at the stockade and let them know that he's captured the Hispaniola and where he's moved it to? Go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.